Welcome, everyone, to the Brownfield Braintrust Podcast. My name is Matt Winefield. I think this is the 16th episode. We're happy to share all sorts of information about browncasts. Say that 10 times real fast. Brownfield projects. Today, we are going to be discussing environmental vapor sampling with two exceptional experts in the field. Those of you who are actively involved in brownfields assessment, remediation, and redevelopment have had to come to terms with new vapor intrusion agency guidelines and regulations that have tightened environmental screening. The reduced screening levels have prompted us to analyze more soil vapor samples, which prompts us to scrutinize sampling and analytical methods. There is a greater need than ever to be efficient in the field and in the laboratory. To that end, we're going to examine one patented solution. It's called VaporDeck, which is a tool for soil vapor sampling everywhere. Now, this is a very technical discussion today, so this brownfield investor will definitely be handling over the reins over the next 30 minutes or so. We have two guests, as I mentioned. First is Will Rice, who is Enthalpy Analytical's technical sales and business development representative, and is based in the San Francisco Bay Area. He has a background in earth sciences and analytical chemistry, working both in the lab and the field for over 20 years. More specifically, he has been focusing on vapor intrusion for 10 years due to the rigorous regional standards in Northern California and the Bay Area. Now, Kevin Kelly is a professional geologist with over 20 years experience at Langan, working on complex projects across the country. He has evaluated the vapor intrusion pathway at dozens of commercial, residential, and industrial sites. So let's talk vapor sampling. And Will, I think you wanted to get things started today.
Sure. So the product we're going to be talking about today is under utility patent and has been somewhat campaigned around the country over the last few years, really to get input from different regions on best practices, both from regulators and then from the consultants who are performing the soil vapor sampling. So just in establishing the why would I be involved, I work for Enthalpy Analytical. We are a national laboratory testing network, and I myself am in an area that is particularly concerned with vapor intrusion, which is volatile organic chemicals, dangerous compounds, air toxics that may be coming from below the building and up into the space, which is very different, especially from a litigious standpoint, to ambient presence that may be around because you live by an overpass or something like that. So the purpose, the upfront why, is that everyone deserves to have clean air and be aware that the air that they are paying for within the space that they live or are paid to be, which is the space that they work, is safe for them. So this tool is something that we've developed over the last 7 to 8 years. As Matt mentioned, we're in a region that is under a higher level of scrutiny, but also has a high demand on development. And so within coastal California, and particularly the Bay Area, there were a lot of brownfield sites, be it military like Hunters Point or Treasure Island or Mare Island, or old industrial. And so there became a real need to take what had been given to us only in the form of guidance and do something about it. And so with that came, go back to that last slide, with that came this image on the left, which was provided from the Department of Toxic Substance Control. This is a state agency. I want to preface this all with that while my region and California itself is certainly more aggressive and more proactive, I am a part of ITRC, the sampling and analysis team for vapor intrusion. And in 2025...
I'm going to ask for all my developer buddies out there, what is ITRC?
Oh, so that's the interstate regulatory. Uh, so interstate regulatory
Technical.
technical council. Yeah, technical regulatory council. And so ITRC, the Interstate Technical Regulatory Council, they're in charge of a lot of different types of guidances, not just in vapor intrusion, but PFAS and other emerging compounds of concern and soon to be PFAS in vapor intrusion. So to look at the diagram on the left, over about the course of 10 years, consultants and whoever was performing the sampling work, which again, we're taking samples of air that are within the between the soil particulates, now called soil vapor, and then sampling that into this canister you see in the middle of the shroud atmosphere right here. But then using helium as a tracer gas, similar to how you might use dye in a water system, to try and point source any joints or junctures for leaks. This is not a requirement, but it is the only option where you have a quantitative pathway, both with policy, your scientific defense, and ultimately the business side, because so much of this is about site access, especially when it comes to brownfield site closure and transfer. You want to make sure that you get it right and that you're optimizing your time in field. So with that said, a major modification we made to the original design was that we made the three-way manifold that would control the flow of sample from point A, being your subsurface well point, into the sample can, point B. We made it by using a disposable three-way manifold. Everything else becomes reusable. And so you go from a situation where you might have, let's see, go back to one of these images. So you go from a situation where you might have a three-way manifold affixed to the side of the wall of your shroud, in which case that shroud is no longer reusable. So there was a time in the Bay Area where if you had 20 sample points, you're going to need 2 flatbed trucks just to transfer that many hard body trays for helium shrouds, because that particular juncture where you're switching from purge to sample was a point of cross-contamination. So one of the major innovations and claims on the patent is revolves around the optimization of that. The other is utilizing a chimney concept with this and a tray. So taking everything that had been a large atmosphere. And at one point I was on site and seeing people with stuff that was, so similar to like the bubble boy, you're literally climbing into a biodome that's filled with helium and going through $10,000 of helium, trying to demonstrate how hard and rigorous you are with your leak check. So, we want to fall in between best practice and sanity always. And as a lab, we are a neutral, unbiased third party. So we end up being a good source for curiosity within the industry. So I'm able to go and talk to my regulators, be it at the State Water Board, Cali, PA, DTSC. If we're changing anything, I can ask them first. And it's really a good function for the lab. So these are the components involved. I don't want to spend all of the time explaining the technology. I think those that are interested will go and look more into the how. I think the why here is still really critical, which is that we are reducing field time by up to 50%. And so when you think about a 10-day event or a 5-day event, that completely changes the nature of how you may use that time, how you might bid that project, what aspects of QA, QC you choose to focus on. But our mindset from the beginning all the way until now has been, this is a tool for the sampler. They're sampling a material that is immaterial. It is non-matter, it is air. And so easy is hard enough. How do we give them tools? So especially when you have younger techs going on site, the actual assembly and use of the apparatus is easy. have some slides talking about helium a little bit more because some people do have more of an aggressive pushback. But I want to pause there and just really emphasize that, we've put this together with our clients like Langan, and this is a great time, Kevin, if you have any input or thoughts, this is certainly a product that we put in with input from multiple Langan offices.
Sure. Thanks, Will. So I'm Kevin Kelly. I'm with Langan Engineering. I just passed my 20th anniversary with the company.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. We're about 1,600 people strong now. When I started, it was about 300. So we have grown from a primarily Northeast firm to a nationwide firm with some international offices as well. We're a full service engineering and environmental consulting and design firm. We support land development projects, corporate real estate portfolios, and the environmental and energy industries. So it's a really cool place to work. Langan's been around for about 54 years now. We have 40 locations in 100 countries that we've worked in. Sorry, we're not in 100 countries, but we've done projects in 100 countries. So yeah, it's a pretty cool place to work. And so I know our California folks had a lot of experience with the development and the prototypes of the VaporDeck. And as somebody who is in the consulting field and evaluates the vapor intrusion pathway and has spent a lot of time in the field once upon a time, a tool like this is really nice in that it kind of compartmentalizes everything and puts it all in one place, all these different components and equipment that you need, and makes it easier to perform repeatable high quality data obtainment when doing subslab sampling. It's often when you're doing subslab samples in residential properties, at least on the East Coast here, we have a lot of basements and crawl spaces that our samplers often have to go into some tighter spaces, and moving that pile of equipment from location to location can be a challenge. Similarly, if you're working on like a warehouse with a lot of square footage, you're loading and unloading carts of stuff, moving it around from sample point to sample point when you're taking more samples in a bigger area. So this is a really neat tool in that it provides a way for efficiency when collecting samples.
I'm gonna ask the question as the reformed environmental engineer who hasn't done anything in the field in about 15 years. How much smaller is this sampling apparatus than most sampling kits that are used these days for vapor sampling?
Yeah, that's a great question. Go ahead.
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I was debating pulling up this slide because there really is not a uniform way that people are doing this. Everyone is kind of trying to solve the mousetrap their own way, and that's kind of what drew us into staying with it so long, because it has been multiple years to get patented, and ultimately the lab really did end up being the one who has the most skin in the game here, just simply because we are certifying and recirculating the cans and controllers. So for us, it's almost more like a rental car business model, and that there's very little that's disposable, and we never really want anything idle. So when you see these other types of designs that are out in the world, many are over-engineered, some are less so. But for us, when you take a look at the technical drawing, you can see that, again, this is why I had tried to kind of emphasize the disposable three-way manifold, because in that way, the regulations are 20 to 40% of helium within your shroud's atmosphere. But that area is relative to the atmosphere that you yourself create. And so in our situation, you have a snap lip system in which there is a minimal atmosphere. And so helium is not so much a scarcity or an issue.
Let me ask it in fourth grade terms. if your system is size X, how large are the other systems out there? 2x, 3x, 4x?
I would say that our system is the size of a kind of larger skateboard, similar to like a longboard, and that the other systems really do start to turn into kind of Frankensteins of what could
Okay.
people get from
I,
which.
So what you're
I think
showing,
what you're looking for, Matt, is if you have a bunch of 15 loose tools
mm,
versus one organized toolbox where everything's in its place, you're
I
carrying
see.
around that one toolbox versus 15 individual tools.
I see. And is it quicker because there's less setup?
Yeah, I mean, Will can talk about the details, but I think really the only thing you're changing out here for the most part is your sampling canisters and the valve itself, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's quicker for several different reasons, and a lot of it comes from sampler confidence. So when they're on site, they're able to check for those typical areas of concern before ever opening the sample. So you're also dealing with, because it is a reusable workstation, you now have a predictable work surface, whereas before people were needing to kind of set up and accommodate tall grass or uneven slab. But I mean, if you really want to break down just what are the modifications that we made and why, that's the slide that I'm sharing right now.
I
And
see.
um, the all of these were, substantive enough within a um, legal review to actually file as claims. But all of it together really is where you get the 30 to 50% increase in speed.
Well, I'm excited to see something like this just because, the two primary agencies in California I deal with, the State Water Resources Control Board and the Department of Toxic Substances Control, is prompting me to sample much more often. And it's
Right.
nice to know there's something that could save on costs. How often has this system been used? I mean, a number of sites, number of clients. How prolific is it now?
Yeah, so at this point, we are getting commissioned. We're on track to have 30 units within the next month and a half. But that being said, we continue to start seeing it be written into work plans more as an explanation for how they will do something faster or how they will sample multiple depths simultaneously. So I would say that at this point, there are 20 that are being consistently used, but we're getting national interest at this point now because of the ITRC. I feel like the people's mindset is, if I'm going to make a change, I might as well make it the right one.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds exciting. What else do you want to share about the VaporDeck?
Yeah, I think, one thing that people, sorry, and this is a text heavy slide, but I think the one thing that people start to push back on is this idea of just it's more cumbersome for the sake of someone else's peace of mind. I've actually found, having been in the industry over 15 years and done a lot of days on site with clients, that the peace of mind and assurance at that point of property transfer, especially if it's a brownfield site, it's very hard to put a value on that. If I know that my samples are going to the lab leak free and it was for a closure event, and I'm not using dust off or IPA or something like that, then to me, I don't really have a value for that. I will say people do like to use dust off and IPA. You're not required to use helium, which is some of this information in the back here, but it is the only means where you're able to measure in field and confirm by a lab via a certifiable method. So that's why for brownfields, and your podcast in particular, it seemed relevant.
Yeah, it certainly is relevant. Um, So, Will, it sounds like we're winding down a bit. Where can people reach you to get more information?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So
some people are driving, some people are looking at their computer screen right now. So I think why don't you just let people know instead of just flashing it out only on the screen?
sure, that sounds good. Yeah. So my name is Will Rice, Rice. I work for Enthalpy Analytical, which is Enthalpy. And you I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. My email is will.rice@enthalpy.com. And I am a part of uh, AVIP as well as ITRC. Both are one is a private professional org, another is a public. So if you have any concept or concern or question around vapor intrusion, especially at a national level, it's likely I'll be interested.
Fantastic. And Kevin Kelly, how can people reach you?
All right. Best way to reach me is my email, kkelly, KKELLY, at Langan, LANGAN.com.
So we've spent about 20 minutes or so going over something that's very technical. Um, any of our listeners can get more information from Will or Kevin at the information just cited. I'm excited to see the VaporDeck being used and speeding up some of the field processes and giving me peace of mind that there's no leaks in the sample. And I thank you, Kevin and Will, for taking part of this and teaching something new to our listeners. So thank you, everyone, for listening to the Brownfield Braintrust Podcast about today, the VaporDeck, and happy sampling out there, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.